Well, good evening, everyone. Hope you're all keeping well. If someone can let me know that I'm live, I think I should be about now, live on YouTube and also Facebook. So, if someone can let me know so that I know that I'm live, I'm not talking to myself. So, we're now heading for workshop number 7 this evening. So I'm just waiting for someone to maybe let me know that I'm online. Myra, hi there. Okay, good. Okay, so you're on, Myra, you're on YouTube, I see. Is that correct? Maybe coming through. So that's great. So I'm online on YouTube. Anyone on Facebook? Excellent. Christina, here we go. That's great. Okay, so I'm on, and the numbers are starting to build up. So, like I said, we're now at the workshop number 7, and again this week I've got another few volunteers for putting in their Gaelic Psalms to add to what we've already got. And hello, John Feskerma. And what I've done again is I've added them to the sort of singing list that I've got and merged them in with the recording that we've already got of Martyrdom. So I'll let you hear that in a wee while. So tonight, once again, I'm wanting to really be driven by yourselves. I think we're still going to stick pretty much to Martyrdom and Kilmarnock. And maybe we could talk tonight a wee bit because I've had some feedback from various people. Maybe some talking about the pitches. A few people have mentioned the fact that their altos and they've got difficulty reaching the high notes. So we can maybe talk a wee bit about that. Maybe also talk a wee bit about presenting. So if we can wait a wee while to see other people joining before I get going on it. And if any of you have got any questions at all about what I've done so far, anything that you want any help with, let me know, because we're just really going to touch on the presenting because that's a subject in itself. And like I mentioned before, Gaelic Psalm singing really is the congregation and the sound that the congregation makes, and in a lot of ways the presenter is very important. Of course he is, and his Gaelic needs to be good, and but the congregation really is where the sound of Gaelic psalm singing comes from. So let's get going and maybe just do a recap again on where we're at. I think we'll just go back maybe to Kilmarnock and just have a recap on Kilmarnock. Let's see where we're at. Okay. Maybe just go through the actual melody of Kilmarnock first, just to remind ourselves what the melody sounds like. Let me just play it. Here we go. Okay, let's. Yeah. Okay, so then we've got an example of Kilmarnock sung, and let me just see if I can actually pinpoint where the actual notes are going to sound while they're singing it. This is an old recording of Kilmarnock. Yeah, So you can see from that tune there that it goes really, really slow. And that's the way they used to sing it way back in the 50s. And we sort of sped it up a wee bit, but they were the main sort of signpost melody notes there. Now, martyrdom, we'll go back to martyrdom because I wanted to maybe focus on martyrdom and maybe even look at some of the presenting lines in martyrdom. I can go over the tune if you want. Let's just go over the tune here. Okay, I keep reinforcing the tune because you really need to have that tune totally embedded in your psyche, in your head, so that anything that you actually do, grace notes and things round about it, you've still got these notes, the main melody notes of the actual tune. So that's just the tune again. So let's now go on to the actual recording of it live. And what I'm going to now do is do the recording of it, have the words up, and so that you can actually follow where the words are being sung. Okay, so that's, is that of any help to you having the words with me following the words? Because I'm quite intrigued about the thought of some people. Do you feel, those of you who are trying to learn Gaelic psalm singing, do you find that it's easier for you to have the main melody in your heads before you even start doing it or before you start learning it? Or do you think it's possible, like with children I mentioned before at my classes, children can pick up the whole thing from the beginning. So, for example, the actual recording there, they would be able to pick that up. Is there anyone here as an adult that finds that it's easier for them just to listen to the finished article, if you know what I mean, the actual singing, and just learn that without knowing the basic tune? Or do you feel as if you really need to know what the tune is? Because it's easy for all of us that have been brought up with it since we were, well, we just can't remember when we learned it. It's like a language to us. It's difficult for me to know, because I learned it when I was so young. How did I absorb it? And only people that are older, coming in as adults to it, can explain to me, well, we're finding it really difficult to pick up what's happening in Gaelic psalm singing from the melody. So, Lillis, Lillis, yeah, Lillis is basically saying, that he likes both ways of doing it. And I think for a lot of people, maybe that's a good thing to have, where you're. But John says that he needs to know the tune. Because it's quite interesting because obviously doing all these workshops, I'm sort of learning as I go along. And the whole aim of this really is to try and see if we can get people interested in doing it and not discouraged into thinking, well, it's so difficult. There's no way that I'll ever learn this. Well, I don't believe that that's actually true. And that is what I've actually done with regard to the recordings that people have actually put in. Because what I was wanting to really show in these recordings is that learners, people that are not maybe Gaelic speakers, but really enjoy and like doing it, that they will have a shot at doing it. And within the whole congregation, they're not going to end up sticking out. So, with a view to that, let me now play the actual recording. So, I've managed to get recordings, and thanks so very much to Emily, Mark, David, Ellie, Scott, and Muriel. And they've put in recordings of themselves singing along with this recording here. Okay, so what I've done with it is I've brought it into my own music software and just put the voices in there, and I'll play it for you so that you can hear, and then I'm going to stop and so that you can hear them in isolation as well. That's the wrong one. Here we go. This is the one.
Tam
Okay, so you can see there that what you've got is we've got 6 singers who have put in just rough recordings of themselves singing along to the congregation, and I've just mixed it in. And you know, when we went in isolation there with all the various voices, some of the voices you would hear them actually trying to do their own grace notes, and maybe in isolation the grace note might sound a wee bit off or a wee bit out, but within the whole Gaelic psalm sound, that does not stick out. And I think that's the thing about it. When you try and isolate individual voices, and you know, we've done that, I've done that over the years in different projects I've been involved in isolation, including myself and other people who are quite well versed in Gaelic psalm singing. When you hear them singing on their own in isolation, maybe it doesn't sound that great because it just depends on the voices and they're in isolation. Now, one of the things I want to actually do, and I was delighted this week to get something that I really enjoyed, because Dolian and Christiana's one of my own cousins, they put in a recording of themselves. Now, what they didn't do, they just did a recording of themselves singing Martyrdom. And what I liked about this recording is, and I played it in a wee while, is that it really brought back memories of the way my own mother and father would sing together at family worship, just the two of them. And it was quite common in all households that people would actually do their psalm singing, you know, morning and evening. And you know, sometimes the husband and the wife might not have been both Christians, but they still actually did it together. So let me play for you Dolly and Christiana singing it. So, yeah, so thanks so much, Snow Yang and Christiana, for putting that in. And if anyone else feels like doing that, please put it into me, because for those of us who are brought up, you know, when people ask, where did you learn how to do Gaelic psalm singing, or where did you rehearse it? Well, that's an example of where it happened. And sometimes, you know, I'd come home, you know, when I was young, I might have been out, you know, a bit late, and I'd come home, and sometimes I would come in at the time my mother and father would be singing it. Now, if they got wind that I actually arrived at the house, they would stop and they would ask me to come in and join them. But quite often in families, they would gather everyone within the family at a certain time. But this is obviously after I'd left home. And that really is the way that it used to happen. And it was really common in villages of whole families gathering together and doing it. And then Martyrdom was the tune that they did there. And then when everyone went to church on Sunday, if Martyrdom was a tune, everyone would join together. And that's, you know, what That's the way that people actually learned it. But that's where it really started, in the home, at family worship, where they would just learn the actual tunes. Now, if you noticed, Dolian and Christiana together, they were quite low, because some people will pitch it really low and other people will pitch it a bit higher. But Gaelic psalm singing, like I mentioned, really is taken from the soprano line. So it's really pitched at the top end of the soprano and tenor. But if, for example, the psalm is really pitched really high, then a lot of people are able to actually sing it an octave lower. Now, I'll give you an example. Let me play the recording that Colin Dan Ferguson did in Callanish, and it was really pitched very high. Let me see if this is the one. This is really pitched high. So if you heard on his fragging in the background hitting that high G, now you could quite easily come in an octave lower than that, because that's really at the high end, and not everyone is able to actually hit that. Some soprano ladies will be able to hit it. So the pitching of the psalm is also important, but the pitch can vary so much. I mean, if you have a group of altos and basses together and they're all singing low, sounds absolutely fine. So, has anyone got any questions at all about it? Because, I'm not wanting to sort of go a wee bit above your heads, but I think it's really important for people to sort of hear that Gaelic psalm singing really originated at family worship in homes, where they basically just learned it. And then as young children, we would be taken to church, and we would be just learning it like a language. And then it seeped into us and it became part of our whole tradition. So let's look just a wee bit maybe at presenting. I know that this is something that people find quite intriguing. So if we go and let's just go for martyrdom and come to the first. First two lines sung together, of course. Okay, so we're there. So Gaelic psalm presenting is basically over 2 or 3 notes. But the individual presenters will end up putting their own sort of style on it. So, now, a presenter or some presenters would actually keep it very basic. They would go, it's just 3 notes, but others would go, now, it's that grace note that you can't really teach. It's in the Persian. The timing as well. Now, this is something that throws a lot of people off and causes confusion. So we finish on that note, but when we're repeating that line, where do we go? We go, or, so the presenting line goes, or and it's manum through So I think something that is maybe quite difficult is, it's all very well knowing the actual melody, one line after another. But when the presenting line comes in and the presenter does, you've got to remember what the third line was. So you've got to remember that. And I think that can be quite difficult. Lillis is talking about the recordings of Mordina and Effie over that they did in Lewis. I think I mentioned that before. These are two sisters from the west side of Lewis who sang together, and there's recordings of them with the School of Scottish Studies where they've done, I think, Coleshill, I think Martyrdom as well, Lillis, if I'm not mistaken. And one of them presented and the other one, so a bit like we heard with Dolian and Christiana, they just did it together as two sisters living together in the house, almost like family worship. And of course, what they were doing, they were so great at doing it, they were adding loads and loads of grace notes to it. So I think this is where the whole thing with grace notes comes in. Once you've actually got the basic melody in your head, you then start introducing the Shaun Nose singing style into it. And that's why I know that people from where Lillis comes from, over in Ireland, there, Connemara and places like that, Shaun Nose singers would find this quite natural to actually do, to add their own special grace notes to it. Because that Shaun Nose singing, Ejobal, yes, reminds me of going to the mission house with my granny and Ysvragad presenting. Went to Samedi class and Angus teaching us tunes. Yeah, and Ysvragad was really my favourite. I don't think there's many people like him. His voice was strong, really strong, right up into his 80s. It was a remarkable presenter, and we had loads of presenters like that. And that's what tends to happen with presenters. Once you start learning the tunes, if you're male, they'll be desperate to try and get you to present in front of the congregation. So what a lot of people do is they will end up listening to different presenters and then trying, first of all, to copy the favourite presenters that they really like. But eventually they will end up hopefully forging their own styles, and I think that's really what I ended up doing. I listened when I started presenting back in church again, because bear in mind I was away for 8 years, and I didn't really have any thoughts about it until I came back home again. But one of the things that I was wanting to do and determined to do was learn all the tunes. And I mentioned last week how I learned them, linking two tunes together, because a lot of people aren't able to read music, and they have to learn the tunes by just memory in psalmody classes, where even looking at the notes, some people used to use the I think it was called the moderator. I can just about remember that. I don't know if there's anyone in here who can remember that. Was it the moderator it was called, when people had all the various things. Then there's a solfa, and then there was the music, the staff, and really staff was what I really learned the tunes with. But then what you do is you add all your sort of grace notes to it. So is there anyone got any questions about the presenting? So the presenting lines are very, very... Let's listen to someone else presenting and see how they actually... The one that's presented by Colin Ferguson, which is really high. Is it this one here? Let's listen to it. Now, you could hear in his vragad, who Isabel was talking about there, his voice coming right through and hitting that high G. But Callum's presenting was so he was slightly different. So he would go so it's just a different variation. Just slightly different, but always pretty much nearly all the time just these three basic notes. But to these notes you add the grace notes to make it. Now I wouldn't do that. I would go I would stay there through. So you got the two ways of doing it. That's the way Calvin Ferguson does it. That's just two ways of doing it. And you're really just doing it with the same three notes. Then some people would then add loads of grace notes. The MacDonald sisters, when they would be presenting, I should maybe take a recording of that in sometime, and we could sort of compare and contrast what she was doing. I think when they sort of looked into the way that they were doing, it was something like an average of 16 or 17 grace notes for every sort of long note. And of course, the thing is going so slow. So just a wee sample of presenting. And I know that for a lot of people, presenting is really something that they wouldn't even consider doing themselves. But it's amazing how many people are forced into doing it because there's no one else to do it, and they will just have a bash at it. And there's a big difference between being in an environment where you're able to actually do that and no one is going to be critical about you trying it. So I think that's about really it for me for tonight. Is there anything that you'd be keen on doing? Maybe adding, I think we had quite a number tonight. I think we had over 90 at one point. So I'm happy to stick to doing these two tunes. Martha, there's a lot that we've got in both these tunes. Feel free to send me a recording. You can go back to previous recordings, and if you want to just listen back to it and record yourself singing to the recording that I did of Martyrdom. Maybe what we'll do to finish off, I will just play it, just to give you a chance. I'm just going to do it, and I will sign off by just playing that. But I'd also love to hear some more recordings of husbands and wives, because, you know, maybe maybe I shouldn't say this, but one thing that I must confess, I don't think there's anything that brings a husband and wife closer together than to be singing psalms together at family worship in the evening. Because, you know, my mum and dad did it, and I'm sure loads of other mothers and fathers did it throughout. It was part of our tradition. And it was lovely to see families together, the children and the mother and father, usually the father always leading. And it was quite often, maybe the father would be taking the prayers and hymns, and maybe he might not be a Christian and the wife could be a Christian. But the father always was the one that would lead, usually, in most cases, the family worship. So, hope you're enjoying these workshops that I'm doing. I'm going to carry on doing them for another few weeks, to probably about 10 of them. But I've also been asked, and I'll keep you informed about this, I've also been asked to do some workshops completely in Gaelic. So that's something that I promised that I will be doing, and there'll be more on that later. But for the moment, I'm going to carry on and do another 3, so at least there's 10 workshops done for you with martyrdom and Kilmarnock, and then maybe resume at a later date, because I'm going to probably start that next series of Gaelic psalm workshops completely in Gaelic, speaking in Gaelic. So the whole thing will be in Gaelic. And for those of you who are Gaelic speakers, I'm sure you'll be able to find out about that closer to the time. I can't really say anything about it at the moment, because I don't really know when we're going to start it, but it's going to happen. But I'm happy to carry on doing this for as long as you're wanting me to do it, and as long as we've got people that are interested coming along, I'm more than happy to do that. So I'm going to now end up playing Martyrdom. So get ready with your phones and join and send me a recording so that we'll have an online Gaelic psalm group. We've already got 6 people in it, and then it would be great to add to that. And it would be really good also to get people sending samples of themselves, 2 or 3 people together, a bit like Martina and Effie did and Doliana and Christiana did. 2 people just singing together, one obviously presenting and then the 2 together after that. That would be really nice. So I'll say good night to you and look after yourselves and stay safe until we see you, God willing, next week. So I'm now going to just play Martyrdom. Get your phones at the ready, those of you who are wanting to do it. Don't feel embarrassed, and then send me in fact, let me actually send it to me at that email there, callum@lanemusic.com. Okay, so if you can send it to me there with just yourselves doing a recording, that would be really nice. So here we go. Hula Bianach, and goodie, and see you again next Tuesday. Let me now play it. Okay, wrong one. Here we go. This is it. Okay then, Hulabianach Gaivula, and good evening to you all. And listen, send these recordings in to me during the week. I would love to hear them, so that we can, as a community, try and see if we can enjoy this time together that we have each week. So, Hulabianach.